things specific, including things specific to colleges, especially on the funding part and how it affects participants, and in particular SNAP ENT and how it works with Pell Grants. And then we'll share some different resources with you, some tips about being a partner in SNAP ENT, and then we'll go into the Q&A. And I'll turn my camera back on during the Q&A. We also have some special guests with us today to give you some real world experiences with administering a SNAP ENT program. We've got Eric Hennessy from Nevada Department of Health and Human Services, and we have Camille Vega from Truckee Community College. So you'll hear from them later on in the presentation. Go ahead and go to the next slide. As you may remember earlier in the cohort, we did a survey to kind of test the landscape of you all as colleges and your experience with SNAP ENT. And one of the questions we asked was, what topics about SNAP ENT that you wanted to learn about. And as you can see by this slide graphic, that the majority of people wanted to hear about an overview of SNAP ENT and the different components of SNAP ENT. And we're going to give you that information today, and hopefully it'll be enough that it serves the purpose of what you needed, of what you wanted. Next slide. So a quick overview again of SNAP ENT. All states are required to operate SNAP ENT programs, and they have to submit a plan every year. And that's all part of the overall SNAP food benefit program that they do that. And the reason is because within SNAP food assistance, there are certain work requirements for certain people that are capable of working. So in order to meet those requirements, each state has to run a SNAP ENT program. The USDA Food Nutrition Service provides a lot of financial support for this program. There's about $104 million in 100% funds, and the remaining of the $350 million you see here is the 50-50 reimbursement funds. In 2018, SNAP ENT served about 458,000 participants, but there's a lot of potential for serving more, with about 35-40 million people participating in the SNAP program. There's definitely a lot of potential for others to be served by this program, by SNAP ENT. And also what this slide shows is basically how the kind of the communication process and who is responsible for what. Again, the state is primarily responsible for their SNAP ENT program, but when it comes to 50-50, again, the federal government, USDA, FNS provides the guidance and the rules, and they provide the funding, which funnels through the state, the SNAP agency. And then with the third-party partners, they contract with the state to provide a lot of the services. In the 50-50 program, many of them put in their own funding that they receive, the non-federal funding, to be able to draw down that reimbursement. But again, everything goes through the SNAP agency, and they are primarily responsible for the program and how it runs. Next slide. Part of the process of running a SNAP ENT program, like I said before, is each state has to submit a state plan. And basically what goes into the state plan is the state draws out what their vision is for their program, for their SNAP ENT program. If they have any plans to grow the program during that program year, they'll put that in the state plan. If they have third-party partners that provide services in their program, they will explain in detail what those providers and what their role is in their SNAP ENT program. And then what components they're going to offer and how many people they plan on serving in each of those components. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the planning cycle is and how this works on the ground. the program runs the federal fiscal year, which runs from October to September of the following year. Typically, the partner has to submit their budget and their plans for providing services to the state, usually in June or early July. So the state has time to put together all the submissions from all their third-party partners and providers by August 15th, and that's the due date to FNS. Other things that are considered is that the state is allowed to submit plan amendments throughout the year. In other words, they don't just do the August 15th state plan and that's done. If things change during the year, then they have the option of submitting a plan amendment. And then usually they try to do those at least once a year. Some states may do it more often. There is no limit as to the number of times they can submit their plan amendments, but in practicality, it usually once or twice is about all they're able to do because of the approval process and everything. And bottom line is they can't really commit funds to their program or to their third-party providers until that state plan is approved. And then one of the things that needs to be considered during this planning process of getting their state plan approved is things like their contracting process, the timing for that. So it may be that they ask that providers provide information earlier than June when they do ask for that information, depending on, again, how long it takes their contracting process and their approval process for their state plan. Go ahead. I'm going to ask Eric Hennessy to kind of chime in here and talk about how Nevada does their state plan process and how they kind of run their SNAP E&T program. Eric?
Hi, my name is Eric Hennessy. I'm a social services program specialist for the state of Nevada, and I oversee the SNAP E&T program for our state. And so, yeah, as Bob explained, the state plan is basically our authority from FNS to spend money, right, on SNAP E&T. So we start every year, we start tracking the monthly support services, the 50/50 reimbursements, and 100% spending dollars to project our annual spending, so we can project the budget for the state plan that's due, as Bob said, in August, on August 15th. So around March or April, we start drafting the language and building budgets. And at this point, we would like to see the proposals from any and budgets from any CBOs or community colleges that we currently have or prospective ones. We currently right now only have community colleges as our partners because we have a new thing with the state of Nevada is the RFA process, the request for application that we have to do for non-state agencies. And so that has slowed us down a little bit here as far as growing out to non-state agencies, so CBOs, community-based organizations. So we've focused mostly on community colleges as our partners. And so, and our vision with them is to build short-term stackable certificates with them. And so that's our vision that we write out in our state plan. And we currently have right now TMCC, Truckee Meadows Community College, as a partner. We have CSN. So Truckee Meadows Community College is in Northern Nevada and Reno. CSN, College of Southern Nevada, is in Southern Nevada in Las Vegas. And we also have a third partner, WNC, Western Nevada Community Colleges, which is in Carson City, which is Northern Nevada as well. And so we work very closely with those three entities, getting the documentation needed, the verifications needed. We ask that, that they look at their budgets, make sure that they have non-federal dollars, right, to match to get for the reimbursement, the 50% reimbursements, and we make sure that they can withhold some delays in payments, right? Because it is a state agency, and we do sometimes take some time with our fiscal agent to get paid. So that's something that we have to make sure that they're aware of. And like I said, our main goal though is short-term certificates, because most people are on SNAP for 6 months or less, right? So we want to make sure that we can get some kind of certificate with them and have them more employable by the end of those 6 months. So that's kind of our goal.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Welcome.
Next slide. So who's eligible for SNAP E&T? Basically, it's SNAP recipients who are receiving SNAP in the month they participate in a component. And the only exception to that is job retention. So with job retention, an individual would have to be participating in a SNAP E&T component prior to their enrollment in job retention. And what job retention means is that the person has become employed, and maybe because of their employment wages, they're no longer eligible to receive SNAP benefits, but they could receive job retention services and could be paid for by SNAP E&T up to 90 days after they complete and become employed and are no longer eligible for SNAP benefits. And also they can't be receiving TANF cash assistance, and because TANF, of course, has their own workforce development program. And they do have to be, able to work upon completion of their SNAP E&T components. There is no time limits for SNAP or SNAP E&T, unlike TANF, which usually has like a 5-year limit. And states can have a lot of flexibility in how they run their program. They can have a mandatory program, a voluntary program. How they contract for providers in their program is flexible. I mean, it's really a state thing, individual state thing, how they decide to do that. So there's a lot of things that state there's a lot of flexibility in running their program, what components they have and who they partner with. Next slide. Now we're going to get into a little bit more about student eligibility in a future webinar when we talk about participants in SNAP E&T. But I did want to share this with you that there is a temporary kind of eligibility for students, temporary change to eligibility rules for students with the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, which temporarily expands SNAP eligibility to include that students that are eligible to participate in the state or federally financed work study during the regular academic year, or as determined by the college, or they have an expected family contribution of 0 in the current academic year. Now, what this is different about the usual rule for that is that the student normally, if they're eligible for a work study program, they would have to actually have a slot or a spot that they're going to be going into during that academic year. So, and this is totally separate from participation in SNAP E&T. So, like I said, students have certain rules around their eligibility for SNAP, certain work requirements, but they could be exempt from those work requirements if they're participating in a work study program. But with this temporary expansion, they're allowed to just be eligible for it, not necessarily have a slot or be participating during that academic year. Next slide. So a little bit about the SNAP E&T funding. The funding for SNAP is authorized through the Food and Nutrition Act. There's basically 3 different funding streams that states have access to when running their SNAP E&T programs. There are 100% funds, which are formula funds, and they come from that $104 million that I spoke about earlier. And those are divvied out to the 50 states, District of Columbia, and 2 of the U.S. territories. So when you think about that, when it's divided up 53 times, and it's based on, that formula is based on the number of work registrants they have in their program, including able-bodied adults without dependents, ABODs, then that money doesn't go very far in running a program. So the 50-50 funds are really where the good opportunity is for building a good, strong SNAP E&T program. And they're very flexible funding. They can be used for the same thing that 100% funds are used for when running the administrative part of the program. But they also can be used to fund participant reimbursements, or what's called for support services, to help people overcome barriers to participating in the program and barriers to actually becoming employed. Next slide. So a little bit more about the 100% funds and what they can cover. They can cover the salaries for staffs, salary and fringe, and overall planning and operations. They can go into covering the cost of direct program expenses, things like case management, tuition and fees, and job development. Some of the characteristics of 100% funds is they are, like I said before, they're capped. So there's only a certain amount that each state will get. And they can't be used to cover participant reimbursements, such as transportation and childcare. Again, those 50-50 funds are for that. Next slide. So like I said before, the 50-50 funds can be used to cover the same things that the 100% funds can be used for. There's a real potential here for colleges to take advantage of those 50-50 funds and using some of the non-federal funds to draw down reimbursements for these different expenses that it's able to cover. Again, with 50-50 funds, you can cover those supportive services such as childcare and transportation. Again, there's a required upfront investment from the college of non-federal funds. They pay for the services first and then get reimbursed. There is no cap on those reimbursements. So it really depends on what you're able to put into it and in allowable services and programs, and then you get reimbursed. And once those reimbursement funds come down to you, they lose their federal status, so they can be reinvested back into the program and again, draw down reimbursements on those funds. So that's a good thing about the 50-50 funds. So as far as third-party partnerships and how they work, the state agency contracts with a third-party partner, a college or community-based organization. These services are provided by those third-party partners, and then if the third-party partner is a college, of course, they get reimbursed 50%, up to 50% through the federal funding on those services they provide. Next slide. And kind of how the funding flows from once the state plan is approved. Like I said before, the funds can't be authorized and allocated until that state plan is approved. But once it's approved, then those state agency will draw down that funding. And once the provider provides services, they will bill the state agency and then they get reimbursed through this third-party partnership. Next slide. Community colleges have the potential to play a big role in the SNAP E&T program. They have a lot of services, a lot of programs that are really a right fit for SNAP E&T. They have those connections to the labor market, so they know what jobs are available out there and what will make the best connection for their students as far as the labor market. They do offer career path opportunities where somebody gets into a career where they not only can get a starter job, but also grow in their career and be able to get promotions where they get some good pay increases that helps support them and their family. There's programs in community colleges we know that help people that are kind of at a pre-college level to help them get up to speed and be able to take those college courses, and then also offer programs that give some good work experience, such as apprenticeships and other things like on-the-job training and other learning models that'll help them become better fit for employment. Next slide. So some of the roles that colleges can play in the SNAP employment training program. There's opportunities for intermediaries or a third-party partner. The state agency could have a contract with a college or a league college or a college board as an intermediary to help run some of the administrative parts of the SNAP E&T program with other colleges that are under them. They could possibly receive 100% funds to help support the administrative oversight of the program and help the state with some of the administrative functions of running the SNAP ENT program. Things like having an umbrella contract for all the colleges under them, and running a single input for the state plan from all the colleges, as well as billing, running a consolidated billing for all the colleges. Or they could use their own 50-50 funds and contract directly with the state to be a third-party partner college. So there's many ways to do this. This is an important function of SNAP ENT that the referral process is really an integral part of getting participants into the program. There's two basic referral processes. One is the direct referral, where the individual would come in through the state agency and apply for SNAP benefits, and at that point they are screened for their fitness for SNAP ENT, and then if they are fit for the program and the right fit, then they are referred to an ENT provider that will in turn assess them and enroll them in their services they're providing under SNAP ENT. For the reverse referral process, the individual would actually enter with the ENT service provider, where they're assessed and determine if they're fit for their own ENT services. Then they would, if they are fit, then they would be referred back to the state agency to check their eligibility, and then ultimately be enrolled into SNAP ENT. Next slide. And another important part of that whole referral process is determining eligibility for the program. And the way it would work is, of course, the college would do an intake on the individual, make sure they're fit for their programs that they're running, and then also to check with the state or the SNAP agency to make sure they're eligible for SNAP ENT. If they are, then they'll be enrolled in their program. They would continue to verify their SNAP eligibility on a monthly basis. And then once they provide those services, then they will be billing the SNAP agency for those services that are eligible for reimbursement. And again, like I said, it's an ongoing process where they would determine eligibility on a monthly basis, and then bill the SNAP agency depending on what the billing cycle is, whether it be monthly or quarterly. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Susan now to talk about third-party partner elements and some other tips and things about Pell. Susan?
Thank you, Bob. So this slide, it just kind of illustrates nicely how the kind of four elements or pillars, you might say, of a SNAP ENT third-party partnership, and where they all come together sort of identifies your best opportunity to get reimbursed, that 50% reimbursement, and just kind of where you sort of sit in being a solid third-party partner. And so it's having participants who are eligible and going to benefit from your program, offering services that align with SNAP ENT, having access to those non-federal funds that are supporting those eligible services, and then having some of the administrative capacity in order to administer the program and track on participants and report. So I'm going to dive a little deeper into each of these topics, these elements, if you will. Next slide, please. So starting with services, we use in the SNAP ENT world, the services or activities that someone participates in are called components. So you're going to hear that terminology a lot. And there's kind of a way to think about, you have to sort of think about what you're offering and then go through a process to see how what you're offering sort of aligns with what SNAP ENT has in their sort of menu of components. So thinking about what you offer at the college that's ENT aligned, which you know, when we share this information with community-based organizations, they offer a whole, you know, wide array of services to the community. And sometimes it's a little bit more of a process to see that alignment. I think for colleges, it's a little more straightforward when you're talking about your workforce programs. Next slide, please. So here we have a list of what Snap ENT offers in the way of services and activities. And again, they're called components. This is a full list of what's offered under Snap ENT and how these components are defined by the USDA. One thing to note is the USDA also requires that case management be integrated throughout any activities. And what that really means is that you need to really be offering some intentional support to your Snap ENT participants as they participate in these activities, and be sort of accountable for how they're progressing and helping support them as they progress. Not every provider has to offer all of these components. In fact, states have an option to not offer all of those components as well. So it's really finding what you're doing already that aligns with these components. And I would say, you know, as colleges, obviously the education component, probably what they call job search training. So some of those maybe, you know, skills that you offer and services that you offer that sort of accompany the work skills training that helps people you know, move forward in becoming employed, potentially job search as well. Some of these other components might not be well aligned with what colleges offer, but maybe not. Next slide, please. So this kind of shows typically how we see alignment with those Snap ENT components. So your education and your workforce programs, anything that's, you know, programs that are leading to employment, offer a career pathway and an employer recognized credential. And that includes things like adult basic education, things that potentially are pre-college level courses, any sort of vocationalized basic skills training. The key is it's, you know, training that's, you know, workforce and job, you know, employment training in nature. So things that are leading to employment, that's sort of key for what you could include in your Snap ENT program. And then going down to, you know, the other elements that are already happening on campus that you would be sort of tapping into and being sort of intentional around. So you're advising, offering that support to your students to help them progress through their program, being able to track their progress, note when they need support, additional support. And then that kind of leads into that last line down there when we call supportive services or participant reimbursements. So it's those services that often are key to helping somebody stay engaged in the program, things that they wouldn't, you know, if they didn't have, they may not actually be able to participate, like transportation, childcare, those types of things that are allowed through Snap ENT that are often key for helping students persist in their education. Next slide, please. So going around this Venn diagram, talk about participants. So Bob talked about basic Snap ENT eligibility. He also talked about student eligibility. So that top list of, you know, bullet list is just kind of a reminder on who in your student body would be eligible for Snap ENT. But then, you know, kind of just going further into that, like understanding how Snap ENT can really support your students. So thinking about who might benefit from Snap ENT, who comes through your doors. So students who might be starting at adult basic education, students who've had a negative experience with the education system in the past, who don't see themselves as being, even deserving or college bound, SNAP E&T can offer kind of some of those additional supports that really help them recognize their own potential and help them succeed where they may not have had a good experience in the past. And again, some of those the support services like transportation and childcare can be key to help kind of bridge that gap for your students. And then again, navigation and case management, so additional just intentional support for that student. I think it's just really important to remember. So next, I'm going to actually invite Camille from Truckee Meadows Community College to talk more about how SNAP E&T can support students and her experience and what she's done, some innovative things that Truckee Meadows Community College has done with SNAP E&T. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute, Camille.
Hi, my name is Camille Vega, and I oversee the SNAP E&T program at our college. We first started our relationship with DWSS and Eric Hennessy, who just spoke. It was in 2018, and it is now 2020. And I just wanted to, reiterate, it is a very, it's a very comprehensive program. There are a lot of different elements that we can provide at a college to support the students. And it's also been a big learning curve. We're still learning and developing different things to make this a smooth transition for our students. As it was discussed before, our participants come in as a referral from DWSS, but I want to encourage, not only the colleges in Nevada that are starting up, but also the colleges across the country, that really the best thing is to identify your current population that are already students, that are already Pell eligible or receiving SNAP, and provide them the services. As the previous slides have also shown, a lot of the services that SNAP E&T participants in this program are needing to receive are already services that the college is providing. We already provide career exploration, resume resources, making resumes, career services, connecting students with employers, and education. And I think this is where SNAP E&T is such a good fit for community colleges, because the whole idea, again, as Eric and Susan have stated, is that we get these individuals employed. So having those stackable programs is really the best place to start. With us, again, in 2018 starting, we really did start a lot of students with short-term certificates, but we have seen once they receive that support to complete a short-term certificate, they're highly likely to continue their education with us. And we're now getting students that are graduating with their associate's degrees. We have students that have been moving on to universities. So I'm not sure exactly. We had some slides with bullet points that I may not be covering everything that Susan had but if you had some specifics, Susan, I cannot remember exactly, but I think that was the big takeaway, is really identifying your current students that are already on your campus. It can expand, it's gonna grow, you're gonna get a lot more people, but to start, we definitely started short and sweet and easy, because it is a huge program and there's so many different things that we can provide. So in order for us to get our heads around it, it's really being able to do a lot more of that reverse referral. And I think especially now, Susan and Jose, we had chatted about this with the Pell. So SNAP eligibility increased to individuals that are now Pell recipients or work study eligible. And I know that there are thousands of students here at our college that are Pell recipients in a CTE type program that may not know that they're SNAP eligible. So our big push right now is just even making students aware of that, because again, it's not about providing something new or doing something extra. We are already doing this. We already have a educational partnership program is what I'm under, and we're already providing these services. that navigation, the support, and the advocacy to these students. We're just now getting reimbursed by Eric and GWSS for what we're already doing. And once we get that funding, because there are so little, I mean, there really isn't any restrictions on it, we've been able to use it to help students pay for things that there would be no other source of funding to pay for. An example would be, if you have a woman that is interested in pursuing education, they're on SNAP, some of the things that are necessary are undergarments, right? And that's something that what other program at a college would be able to provide that to somebody that's interested in going to school? But it's necessary. It's necessary for education, employment, and that's where SNAP ENT funding can really help an incoming student or somebody that's interested in pursuing employment.
Thank you, Camille. And you touched on a lot of things, and some of it we'll get into in the next couple of slides. Really appreciate your perspective, and you can say it better than I can in most cases. So I am going to let you have the floor again to talk about that stuff. So when we, the next kind of circle on our little Venn diagram that we want to cover is capacity. So, this is a federal program. There are reporting and tracking requirements. And so that it can't be ignored or overlooked when we talk about this program. So having the capacity to track data and report on your program and the progress of your participants is really important. And again, this is something that colleges do. It's figuring out how you sort of weave this work into how you're already doing this. And so you do have a leg up from like other types of SNAP ENT, potential SNAP ENT providers who may not have a very sophisticated system for tracking and reporting. But it's just identifying what that capacity is and how you can sort of fold this into your existing capacity. But these are some of the elements of data and reporting capacity. Next slide, please. The other piece of the capacity is the administrative and fiscal. So documenting how you've spent your funds, managing federal funds, being able to, go through an audit and monitoring process, and also having the capacity and the sort of internal collaboration with your fiscal staff to develop budgets, to create a process for invoicing. All of that is just another key piece of being able to administer SNAP ENT. Next slide, please. So moving around the Venn diagram, funds, Camille, you talked a little bit about this, but so these are some examples of, typical non-federal funds that might be coming to the college that you could be using to draw down reimbursement. So, any funds that are state level and or originate at the state to support students in your college, like worker retraining dollars, other low-income student supports, tuition set-aside resources, funds for target populations that states might have certain initiatives to support reentry population or homeless individuals or non-custodial parents. So these are some solid examples of what types of funding you might be able to leverage. Camille, I know you talked about in our preparation, a kind of a unique example of funding that you've utilized at Truckee Meadows from your emergency scholarship fund. So I might ask you to talk about that.
Somebody actually had sent a chat about asking what are some examples of the non-federal funding streams. So I had responded. So the biggest ones are your college scholarship, foundation scholarships. Much of those are non-federal. We also have an emergency scholarship program. Again, that's non-federal, and that's a big one because those are students who obviously are experiencing some sort of emergency that needs funding through your college. And If they weren't on SNAP, it's a good opportunity to get a student connected to SNAP. If you're having a financial challenge and you need money to go to school, you may also need additional resources like SNAP benefits or housing. So really the biggest thing that we want to do with our emergency scholarships is to get them connected to long-term resources like SNAP. Also, different types of state-funded legislative programs. An example that we have here is at the same time we received our SNAP ENT, we also received legislative funding for a prison reentry program. And in the state of Nevada, pretty much everybody leaving incarceration leaves with a SNAP card. And of all populations that need employment and training, that's a very, needed population that needs that. So we use that funding to assist with those individuals. We have a displaced homemaker program here, and we use the salary for the time spent on a student that is a displaced homemaker. I think that was the biggest non-federal funding. Oh, the other thing I had also mentioned is that you don't need to just use the non-federal funds that your institution has. So there's an example we have a nonprofit agency in town that has a state-funded scholarship for individuals that are interested in doing a short-term career program. It doesn't fall under a college credit program. It falls under more of a community ed, but it's a certification. It's for community health worker. So we are able to leverage that scholarship that this nonprofit gives to our student who's a SNAP ENT student. So you don't always have to just look at what non-federal funds your institution has. I would also encourage you to look at non-federal funds that your student receives that is not from your institution. We have a partnership again with the university in town, and they provide scholarships for students interested in drug and alcohol peer support. We don't offer that class here, but we're able to support a SNAP ENT student with our support, our resources, resumes, Career Hub, all of that, and then leverage that funding that they receive for the scholarship to attend a university program. Hopefully that made sense.
Thank you, Camille. Next slide, please. So SNAP ENT and Pell, some things to consider. So, Pell is obviously a significant key federal, funding stream to support low-income students. And you can't supplant Pell with SNAP ENT. You can't replace Pell when it's available for a student with SNAP ENT. That being said, SNAP ENT can kick in when Pell is pending. So if a student is applying for Pell and it hasn't been awarded yet, then you can use SNAP ENT. So maybe that, first quarter they enroll, they're applying for financial aid, Pell hasn't come through. You could use SNAP ENT to cover their costs in that first quarter. Or you can use SNAP ENT to cover things that Pell won't cover. So consider, thinking about how you can sort of braid SNAP ENT with Pell or sequence SNAP ENT with Pell is really important. In addition, so if Pell covers certain expenses, supportive services aren't covered. So Pell could cover tuition and SNAP ENT could cover the case management and the advising efforts that you're providing to them, as well as, maybe transportation and childcare and or other expenses that aren't covered through Pell. So when you think about your students, it's sometimes I think it's assumed that, okay, well, my student's on Pell, so they're just, SNAP ENT is off the table. And that's really not the case. It's more complex than that. And so you really can enhance what you offer to that student with combining SNAP ENT with Pell. Next slide. So we did have a spot here, Camille, for you to talk a little bit more about Pell. If you have anything you wanted to add, please do.
I think that one of the best things about the SNAP ENT funding and what we've used it for are students that have something going on with their Pell for that semester. So an example would be not meeting academic progress. We also get a lot of SNAP E&T participants who may have student loan defaults. Those are two really easy things that we can help with that there would probably be no other funding source. To get back on academic progress, students sometimes have to do a semester to get their grades back up, and they may have not been able to complete an appeal or not eligible for an appeal. So that's where SNAP E&T can come in and say, we'll pay for the classes that you need in order to get your grades back up, to get you back on Pell. Because as Susan said, we want them to get federal financial aid. That should be their first funding source. Not only is it a long-term solution to their education funding, it's just, it would use up a lot of our SNAP money if all we did was pay tuition. The second, again, is student loan defaults. Both people leaving incarceration and individuals that are lower income, student loans are the last thing that they're going to have funding to pay for. So the agreement a lot of times that we have with people coming in is, we will cover your semester while you work on your student loan defaults. And it's really exciting because of both of those situations. That's where, as I was talking about, we're starting to see the graduates, they often came in with that barrier. And this is the best part of SNAP E&T, is that because it's unrestricted, we can provide that assistance to get them back on track and see them succeed.
Thank you, Camille. I want to keep moving because I know we just have a few minutes left. So really valuable, the specifics that you have to add there. Just really quickly, these are some tips for success. And I will say that when we talked to Camille, she kind of ran through this whole list too. And when she was talking about her experience with SNAP E&T at Truckee Meadows. So these are kind of tried and true. But, start small, start with a small group of students, a small program, maybe one pathway, one program that you're offering to really get a sense for how this works in your college before you go big. You don't need to start big. Collaborate and communicate with your SNAP agency. One of the reasons why we wanted Eric to be here to sort of chime in is to really stress the importance of collaborating, communicating, understanding the goals and priorities of your SNAP agency in your state. Again, integrate SNAP E&T into what you already do. All those things are very important, and have a mechanism to make sure that any staff that are playing a part in this really understand the role they have to play and what they need to do. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, so I won't go through every last bullet point here. The next slide, Jose, is just some resources that might be helpful to get a better understanding of SNAP E&T. So those will be available on the slides that we share, but I do want to open it up to questions since we only have a couple more minutes. So feel free to unmute. You're muted, Jose.
Thank you, Susan. I was just saying I thought it might be helpful to stop sharing screens so everybody can see each other.
Yeah.
If you're shy, you can put your questions in the chat as well. We're looking at that.
And I would say, like, the takeaways that I think might be important for you, as you're starting in this cohort, is really that, starting small. SNAP E&T can be really big and really impactful, but it's also complicated. So, that I would just reiterate that, think about where you can start that's really manageable, and kind of take the training wheels off and go bigger as you go. That's a really sound approach. You don't need to come in with this giant budget right off the bat. It tends to be a lot to take on.
And I'm sure Camille mentioned this already, but she mentioned it to us when we were chatting before this conversation. I just want to reiterate, if there's one thing for you all to think of, especially those of you that are either recently became providers or are thinking about becoming providers is start small and build up. That way it's more manageable. If there's no other questions, and I'm giving you all until 3 p.m. Eastern time, otherwise I'll give you all back your 15 minutes to your day. There was a question earlier that came in privately about whether this session would be available after. Yes, so we're recording the session. We'll make it available to you all afterwards for you to revisit. The presentation will also be available. We have a SNAP ENT 101 session already in our website at acct.org. We're hoping that this one is a little bit more in-depth, gives you a little bit more perspective from the community college side, and also that it's helpful for you to hear from your peers and from state agency representative to see what it's like from their end and what they're expecting from you as you go through the process.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, Camille, what was some of the programs that you guys saw the most success with these students? Because, you know, for those of us that are at community colleges that have lots of options, right? And that's always what you think of, oh, I want to offer it all. And everybody's saying start small. So
No, that is actually a really good question. So when we started, as Jose had mentioned, we started with just one program, and that was our manufacturing program. And what I think the best, and it's different, right, for each college, what you guys offer, but I would look at your short-term stackables. So things that students can do in one semester. We want them to continue. We all believe in higher ed, but sometimes they're on SNAP for a short period of time. They may not have had traditional high school education. So a long-term college, you know, 4-year degree can seem very overwhelming if you're just starting. And we want small successes. Even if you just get them into a 1-credit OSHA class, that counts for DWSS as a career training, and they've completed a 1-credit OSHA. And the pride and satisfaction they get from completing that is amazing, and they are now interested in going further. The good thing about our manufacturing program, it's on an open entry basis. So that's the other thing to keep mindful of when you start this program, is trying to identify as many of your programs that don't fall in the traditional semester, because you're going to get, I guess if you already have your students and you're dipping into your current student population, it doesn't matter. But as you start getting referrals from DWSS or other agencies, they're going to come in at all different times in the semester. So I would really look at some of those programs that students can get into right away. And for us, there are things like manufacturing, welding, HVAC, automotive. Those are the big ones that I would say are those open entry classes. And the reason, again, is individuals may not be on SNAP for long periods of time. Sometimes they are interested today, but telling them to come back 6 months from now is not very helpful. But also part of SNAP ENT that was on one of the slides are all the other things that they could be doing before semester starts. And what we try and do is have everybody do a resume. If you don't have one, let's work on your resume. We have our financial aid can provide financial aid webinars, or not webinars, you know, like info meetings through our financial aid department. That could be done. They could do other things. We also have something called Getting Ahead. Some people may know about it based on Bridges Out of Poverty. We can provide other non-academic programs to support student success. So that would be the first thing to really look at, are what are your short-term stackable courses, and the best ones are the open entry, so that you have options for them if they come in today and say, I want to do this. That program I was telling you about for the drug and alcohol peer support that's offered through the university, and our community health worker is provided through our community ed. What I like about those two is I do often get people come in and they want to go into counseling. And we know counseling is often a 6-year full-time, maybe 12 years part-time, right? It's a long time. And you're getting a SNAP participant, and to tell them you could totally do this, but it's going to take 12 years, again, is very defeating, right? They have to get working tomorrow. And again, the other thing is give them those short little successes that they can do in a couple months. That's why I really like the drug and alcohol or community health worker. So also looking at other options for long-term programs, and they complete a community health worker, drug and alcohol, they can still go to college. We can still support them for those 12 years, but we try and identify something that they can do right away, get their foot in the door, see if they're even interested. And oftentimes they are, and they want to continue, which is great. But Eric likes successes. So we try and give our DWSS office successes as well. You know, it's a partnership with them, and we're all here to serve the same population. Yeah.
And is there somewhere we can see the data on employment after they do this?
So that would probably be your partnership with the DWSS office. We do some follow-up. I mean, I think with SNAP ENT, the unique thing about it is we're so involved in their lives. When they are on SNAP, we learn all sorts of different things about them, and they want to come and tell us they got employed. So sometimes we have that information, but again, we're starting small. We definitely don't have, you know, thousands of students in SNAP ENT, so it's easy for us to get that feedback. But I think that's where DWSS is the ones that can track that easier. Eric, I think you know this, you can look this up. Maybe it's not there. You might have still doing.
Sorry, I'm here. No, I'm here.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I
think
was muted.
You have the ability to look up and see employment for folks after they complete SNAP ENT.
Yeah. So what we have an annual report actually that's due to FNS every year by the end of the year, right? Annual, obviously, but and where we have to track all SNAP ENT participants for after they leave the program, and we report on employment the second and fourth quarters after leaving the program. So yeah, we definitely have that data.
Awesome. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Any final questions before I let you all go?
I just want to tell Bob that I live in Thibodeau. I just think it's so funny. Love reading that last name.
This is not the first time I'm here about hears this.
No, sure it's not.
Well, I just want to thank you all again for making time for this and being engaged, asking questions. We'll make this recording available.
I think Jose may have.
I thought I froze, but I guess it
No,
was.
I think it would. I think Jose froze. We'll make this. I'll go ahead and finish what I'm pretty sure he was going to say. We'll make this recording available as soon as possible. We may have to, tweak it down, or what you have to do with videos sometimes to make it work. But on behalf of Jose, I think this was a great first kickoff, and I'm really excited for our next one. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Jose, myself, Bob, or Susan, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. I hope you all have a great afternoon. Bye.
Everybody.
Everybody, thank you.
Camille. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.